Welcome back. This is the third to last power rankings of the regular season. Even though there's a Saturday night 3 weeks from now, which has regular season games in it, there's only one game that night, and it's just Canadian division teams mostly that are playing over that week. So we have this power rankings next Saturday, which is crazy, and the following Saturday, which is also crazy, and then that's it. That'll be it for the power rankings, and then you won't see them again until probably after the playoffs are done. And we'll discuss which teams are where as we head into expansion, and we might do a power rankings after expansion, all this other wonderful stuff, where it'll be 32 teams, and that'll be exciting, right? So, on week 14, I've been counting it on here. I make sure I scribble it down in the book. Week 14. What's happening? Well, why would I be wearing Columbus? Well, because for fans of Columbus, it's been a long season. This week they go 0-3, and we're in 31st. So technically they drop one spot. Technically, because Vancouver's back on the power rankings. So technically they drop one spot, though in reality they kind of stay where they were. And Vancouver coming back into the power rankings did cause some teams to drop one spot. They really didn't this week. They just had Vancouver come back in. Columbus being the first example of that. So, yeah, it's been a rough time if you're a Columbus fan. Shouldn't really be a surprise that they're where they're at. Number 30, dropping 2 spots from last week. They go 0-4 this week. They're 14, 27, and 6. And I know their fans are kind of tired of this season. They want it to be over. Don't worry. A couple more weeks. New Jersey's season is done. Just the precipitous fall that's been taken by New Jersey has been ridiculous. They currently sit 1 point ahead of Buffalo. And Buffalo had that great losing streak to guarantee they'd finish last, and nobody's respecting that now. New Jersey trying to do some of the same thing here. But all kidding aside, New Jersey's just had a really rough go of it. And when you trade off Palmieri and Zajac, that's kind of what's going to end up happening. So this is kind of predictable. Number 29, staying in the same spot as last week. And they go 0-3 this week. So we've got some teams that are bad. And you know what's funny? This reminds me of doing the NFL power rankings, where towards the end of the season, I'm like, do I really have to rank all these bottom teams? And people are like, yes, including Anaheim. Now in football, there is no team actually called Anaheim. And right now in hockey, right? So they're 8th in the West. The Ducks, it's been rough. Like I said, they go 0-3 this week. Didn't really look like a threat against Vegas much at all. And yeah, so it's been a long season in Anaheim. It was expected. The 3 teams that are on here, the only one that you could say, well, that's unexpected, would be Columbus. New Jersey and Anaheim, it was expected that might be a bit of a long season. Number 28. We're going to stay in California. Dropping 1 spot from last week. They went 1-2 this week, and that's LA. So the good news for these California teams is they've still got games left against each other. So there's guaranteed victories there, right? They can't both lose. For LA, the game tonight against Arizona was, again, and I mentioned this in the review, you could tell that one team is playing for the playoffs and the other team was the Kings. And so, again, it does make it hard to get through some of these games. But the other part that's weird is this is considered kind of a really wide open draft. So you don't look at teams that are tanking right now and go, man, they're going to get this really great player. You look and go, they're going to get the first shot at Owen Power. And again, but even though he's the consensus number 1 pick, it's not like it's by a mile. It's not like it's his draft. It's going to be bizarre. So yeah, we'll see how things go. Number 27, dropping 3 spots from last week. They went 0-2-1 this week. They're 18, 24, and 5, and we're keeping it in California. So this is where we're at with the West. We've got 3 teams that are really good, 3 teams that are really bad, and 2 that are making up their minds about whether or not they want 4th spot. And for San Jose, they're not interested. LA, not interested. Anaheim, what's 4th spot? So, it's been a rough bit of a schedule for all 3 California teams, especially if you felt like, we could still turn this around. Nope. It's that part in Simpsons where the pig's flying through the air. It's gone. I know. Number 26, they drop one spot only because Vancouver comes back in. Otherwise, they'd be in the same spot they were last week. So again, Vancouver comes in. They cause a little bit of a drop here, like LA dropped one spot. But number 26 this week is actually Ottawa. So they're number 26. They're back to 7th in the North. They've had a decent run lately. They actually went 2-1 this week. Again, they only drop one spot because Vancouver comes back in, and there was somebody who passed them as well. There's a team that's not on the board yet that their fans are going, wait, what's happening? Yeah, I know. So Ottawa 26th on the board. They're playing out the string, but they're playing it out tough. And so they've got 2 home games coming up with Vancouver on Monday and Wednesday, and we'll see how that goes for them. But yeah, 26th on the board, again, because Vancouver comes back in, not because I dropped them. Number 25. This team moves up one spot, although technically moves up 2. They went 2-2 this week. They're now 13, 28, and 7. And that's Buffalo. What's impressive with Buffalo is they're doing it without, well, everybody, right? They're doing it with a ragtag group of young players who, again, might be a little looser than the teams they're playing against because they don't have a playoff spot to play for. But it's been impressive to watch what Buffalo's done lately. And so there's reasons with guys like Middlestad, now Luukkonen with his start last night. Dahlin's definitely gotten better. And so there's reason to think that things in Buffalo could get better next season. And we could start by looking at how they finish out this season. And then it's going to be on Kevin Adams. What does he do with the team in the offseason? There's some promising parts here. You need to augment that with the right other parts of the roster. Otherwise, it's all for naught. Number 24, dropping one spot from last week. They went 1-2 this week. They're 17, 25, and 8. And let's be honest, Detroit, who are still in this row, Detroit really owes a debt to Bernier and Grice right now. Bernier and Grice have both been playing very, very well for Detroit. They're keeping them in games. They're getting them points. So again, that'll be interesting when we get to the draft lottery next month. If a team that Detroit passes ends up getting the number 1 spot, if fans are going to be like, we lost another lottery. Well, we'll see. So for Detroit, they're 24th. Not too shabby, considering last season where it was. And it's funny because before this season, when people said, so who do you think is going to finish last overall? I said, I don't think it'll be Detroit because teams don't usually finish last overall back-to-back seasons. And here we are. It does not look like Detroit should be last overall this year. And they've had some points lately, and they've kept things competitive. Number 23. So these guys go 3-1 this week. They're now 19, 19, and 3, and that's Vancouver. So when I was bringing Vancouver back into this, I brought them back where they left off. So when I took them off the board, they were actually 24th. So the last time I had a power rankings with them, they were 22nd. They were 24th when I actually pulled them off the board. So they actually dropped one spot from where they were the last time I ranked them, but I'm okay with having them at 23rd. Here's the thing. So they beat Toronto twice, right? In both games, they were outplayed. So I felt like, if I have Vancouver in this side of the board, that's just going to look ridiculous. Vancouver needs to work their way up. They split the 2 games against Ottawa. That didn't tell me that moving them up past 23rd made any sense right now. So, I'm hopeful that they make a go of this. They are 8 points back of that last playoff spot. They have 5 games in hand. They still have a bunch of games left against Calgary. If they could beat Calgary in those games, and if Montreal continues to stumble, it's there. But it is an impossible schedule. It's such a tough schedule. So I understand the reality of the situation, and that's why they're 23rd. Again, if I had them over here, it would just seem ridiculous. I know they went 3-1, but it would still seem ridiculous. Number 22, staying in the same spot as last week, and this is what a lot of teams did this week. They go 1-2 overall. They're 21, 22, and 5 now, and that's Arizona. So for Arizona, 22nd overall, and the game against LA tonight, they played well, but LA's down here, so I'm not going to bump them up a whole lot. It was nice to see them, though, make that effort after kind of handing 4th spot to St. Louis, that after St. Louis actually won to grab it, they go, well, wait a minute, no, maybe we want that after all. So we'll see how 4th spot, how that race, that turtle derby that's going on currently, how that turns out. But Arizona gets the win tonight. So I left them here. Again, I didn't bump them down below Vancouver. I left them there. Number 21, also staying in the same spot as last week. They went 1-1-1 this week. They are now 21-19-7. There's a very clear hierarchy on this board now, and Philadelphia sits at 21st. It was again for them. They went 1-1-1 this week. Yeah, so 1 win in 3 games. That win was over the Rangers, and then they lose against the Rangers. They're not getting enough wins to really stay in the hunt. They're basically out of this, and so yeah, they stay in the same spot as last week, and we'll see how they do next week. But it kind of looks like they're done, which I think we kind of knew that anyways. But they started getting your hopes up, and then never mind. We're just kidding. Number 20. These guys go 2-1 this week. They actually drop 1 spot. They dropped 1 spot, and I'm going to come out and say it. They dropped 1 spot because Dallas passed them. So that's the only reason that the Flames dropped 1 spot from last week, is because they were passed by the Dallas Stars. Other than that, I would have left them in the same spot after a 2-1 week. And again, we'll see how things go this week. If they beat Montreal again, yes, you will see Calgary above Montreal. Montreal takes a bit of a drop this week. Calgary as well, but again, just because Dallas passed them. Dallas had a decent week, other than, I know the Detroit game, I know that 7-3 score, but the overall week for Dallas was good, and we'll get to that. So for the Flames, they're still in the hunt. They're only 4 points back. Honestly, speaking on it as a fan, I would love to see the Flames make the playoffs. I think that would be great. I think a series between Toronto and Calgary would be fight-filled and fun and amazing, and then you might end up with Calgary and Edmonton in the finals for the division, or maybe it's Winnipeg and Toronto. You can't have a losing proposition there. Montreal, I don't think you get the same fire with Toronto. You get better ratings. So the YouTuber in me says, it'd be great if Montreal plays against Toronto, because those videos would be the highest viewed ever in playoffs for me. But yeah, the fan side of me says, it'd be fun to see Calgary against Toronto, because those teams would hate each other within 3 minutes. It'd be fantastic. Number 19. And I hemmed and hawed over where to put these guys, but they were 1-2 this week, so they dropped 2 spots from last week, and that's Chicago. Chicago flirting with getting into the hunt, and then not at the same time. Their problems with Nashville, we're likely going to look back when we do an autopsy on their season and say that's what sunk them, was their inability to beat Nashville. But yeah, they're 19th on the board. I debated about whether or not to throw them at 20th, but again, we'll see how this week goes. So I have them at 19th. They did win 1 game out of 3 this week, and again, they do drop. It is a 2-point drop for them. And there's a 2-point drop coming up as well after this team, who moved up 2 spots. They're now 18th. They went 3-1 this week. The 1 is what people are going to point out. The 1 is what everybody's going to talk about. So with Dallas, yes, they had an embarrassing 7-3 loss against Detroit. And then they came out tonight and they beat the living heck out of them. And the only reason that game goes to overtime is because Jonathan Bernier was in beast mode. That game was ridiculous. But Dallas dominant. Dallas wins 3 out of 4 this week. And Dallas still looks like they're probably going to be the team that gets that last spot, because they have enough games in hand. And tonight they won one of them. As long as they win those, and that's key. So they're still behind Nashville on the board overall. But I'm acknowledging they're probably going to pass Nashville. If they keep winning 3 out of 4, eventually they're going to catch the Nashville Predators. Unless Nashville's winning 3 out of 4 as well, right? So it's an interesting little race. We'll see how things turn out. Number 17. This team's dropping 2 spots from last week. They went 1-3. They're now 20-17-9, and that's Montreal. I'm not panicking with Montreal at this point. Still got them 4th in the division, but there's concern. There's concern because Calgary's there. They've beaten them twice now in regulation. And Vancouver, 3-1 since coming back from their COVID break. So, these teams aren't exactly making it easy. And again, it's brutal scheduling all around. But since these guys play against each other to end out the season, and it's funny because during the downtime, people are like, just take those games between Vancouver and Calgary, put those at the end of the season. They don't matter. They might. Those games might matter. And how much would that drive Montreal fans insane? If Montreal occupies that 4th spot and then their season's done, and then they have to watch as Calgary and Vancouver play against each other. And if there's a situation where mathematically one or the other or both potentially could take that last spot. So it could be really tense over that last little while for Montreal fans. Right now, Montreal 17th. Like I said, if Calgary wins that third game as well, I'm going to have to rethink this. But we'll see. I don't want to overreact. You know, it was Caden Primo tonight. It's not their... I mean, Price is out, and Gallagher's out, and Tatar's out right now. Looks like it's day to day. Byron's out. It's a lot of guys, so we'll see how things turn out. Number 16. They only went 1-1 this week, but the game they had today was impressive enough that I moved them up 2 spots. They're now 20-19-6, and that's St. Louis. That game against Colorado, they get down in that game 2-0 early. And St. Louis has been folding in those games recently, not today. Ryan O'Reilly put the team on his back. He gets a hat trick. It was a big game, and it feels like St. Louis may have woken up and they might be ready to grab that 4th playoff spot. They're not going to catch the top 3, but they have games in hand on Arizona. They can solidify 4th spot. It's not an easy schedule, but they can do it. So we'll see what happens with St. Louis from here. I know Arizona's schedule is a little bit easier, but St. Louis does have those extra games left to play. And if today is any indication, they've finally woken up. And so I throw them into 16th place. Number 15, moving up 1 spot from last week. They went 2-0-1 this week, too. 26-21-2, and that's Nashville. So the Preds move back up. And it's going to be interesting to see between Nashville and Dallas who occupies that final spot. So again, they move up 1 spot from last week. You'll notice not a lot of movement. There's been nights where at the end of it, I look at the scores, I look at the board, and I go, yeah, that's about right. And as the season goes along, that's kind of the way that works. There's a hierarchy. And this year, because of the divisions being the way that the scheduling is, it's even more that way this year than normal. It's not like you can have Colorado go out to the East Coast and get swept in 3 games and go, well, wait a minute, maybe they're not that good. So the teams that have really, really good records, there's about 10 of them. Teams that have poor records, there's almost 10 of those. And it keeps things kind of static on the board too, which I had kind of anticipated before the season started, which is why you still get the top 31 and not just the divisionals, as I was intending to do originally. Number 14. I went back and forth on this. Number 14, they went 2-2 this week. They're now 24-18-6. And bless the Rangers' hearts, they're not going to end up making the playoffs. The record, basically, the way it goes is this. If the Rangers win out, they win all their games, Boston only has to go 5-4-1 over their last 10, and the Rangers can't catch them. So if Boston gets 11 points in their last 10 games, the Rangers can't catch them. And it's easier than that for Boston to stay ahead of Philly. So the Rangers have gone on this nice run. We've seen Lafreniere starting to pick it up. We've seen Shesterkin playing really well. Georgiev's played pretty well as well. So the Rangers are playing well, but it's been kind of tough for them. So next year, things might be easier for them. And it all depends. There's 2 different schedulings that the NHL has put forward that teams will choose from. One of them, you get back your 1 versus 8 conference matchups. And the other one, you get divisional playoffs. So teams are going to decide what they want. And I'll discuss that in a video tomorrow. But it's fascinating. We'll see what they end up doing. And if it's a conference setup, that may favor teams like the Rangers, who in a divisional setup are in a situation like this where they're not going to make it. Number 13, staying in the East. These guys went 2-1-1 this week. They're now 29-14-5, and that's the Islanders. So the Islanders went on that hot streak. They ended up on this side of the board in this column briefly. Now, I've referred to them as rows because this is the first year ever that I haven't had rows. So I refer to it as rows even though they're columns. But the Islanders, it's been shaky. And that 6-3 loss against Washington, we'll see how the third game goes, but so far through the first 2 games, Washington's kind of beaten them at their own game, winning in a shootout, and now winning 6-3 in New York. So we'll see how it goes from here. And where the Islanders are at. But for me, right now, I have them fourth in the division. Would I want to play them in the first round? No. That's a whole other conversation. And when we're getting set for the playoffs, I will also talk about which teams I would not want to play if I was a coach or GM. Which teams do I not want to see on the other side of the ice? And which ones would I probably want to see? So if we had a situation where it was like the Southern Pro Hockey League, where you just challenge the other team, you're all right, we're the number one seed, we want those guys, and talk about how I think that would work if the NHL did something like that. So when the power rankings are done, it frees me up to do other stuff like that. We're up to number 12. Number 12, going 0-2 this week, dropping one spot from last week. They're 27-17-3, and that's Winnipeg. Again, I don't want to overreact with Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg still has a pretty good team. I think Toronto just flat out beat them a couple of times. And so I felt like that just showed me that Toronto's better than Winnipeg right now. We'll see how Winnipeg's week this week goes. If it's another rough week, we'll see a drop. Again, same spot. They drop one spot, they're up one spot. Like there's really not a lot of movement on this board. I know people always get upset with how things are, but it's just not a lot of movement right now. And so, yeah, Winnipeg for me is 12th, but we'll see how this week goes. Number 11, dropping one spot from last week. So dropping one spot, also dropping one spot. We're going to stay in the North for this one. They went 1-1 this week. They're now 27-16-2, and that's the Oilers. So the Oilers, I have them number 2 in the North. I have them number 11 overall. Again, a 1-1 week. They just got passed. Winnipeg gets passed. Edmonton gets passed. And we'll see how things go for Edmonton. It is interesting covering the North because it is a completely different setup than the other divisions. And it feels like there's more question marks with the North teams than there are with the other divisions. But I understand how this works. Because on this side of the border, you have the Canadian media that's just tearing teams down all the time. And you have fans that are overly critical of the teams as well. I think it makes them look worse than what they actually are. And, of course, we won't know until we get to the semifinals, right? But, yeah, Edmonton, for me right now, I have them at 11th. I apologize. Number 10. These guys move up 2 spots from last week. They went 3-1. Much like Dallas, they had one loss that was kind of embarrassing. So that prevents them from moving up further. But they did move up 2 spots. They're 27-13-6, and that's Boston. So the Bruins are in the top 10. And that loss against Buffalo, it happens. It's like Dallas's loss against Detroit. I don't overreact to one game. That's why Toronto hasn't shown up yet. When Toronto lost those 2 games against Vancouver, I was seeing a bunch of, you just drop them. You need to drop them way down. They're terrible. Drop them way down. Oh my God. If I did that, if that's how this board worked, that'd be ridiculous. Because then you'd have the huge drop and then the huge rise because they beat Winnipeg. No. So for Boston, it's been a slow but steady climb. They're in the top 10. First time they've been top 10 in a while. And we'll see against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh tomorrow. That'll tell us where Boston's really at. Against Buffalo, there might be some concerns. We'll see where they're at against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not happy with the way the last game went. And so might have a chip on their shoulder, and we'll see how that works for them tomorrow. Number 9. This is the first time I've seen this team outside of the first column all year, and I'm 90% sure this is the lowest they've been. And looking back to last year, I don't know that they got this low either. That's Tampa. You know what's interesting with Tampa too is this week they went 2-1. They're 31-14-2, but for Tampa, it just feels like something's a little bit off, and I understand. I understand that they're without Stamkos, they're without Kucherov, but I don't know. There's just something that feels like it's off with that team. Yep, it might just get fixed when Stamkos Kucherov comes back, but it feels like they're destined to end up third now in the division. It's just the feeling I'm getting with them right now. They're destined to end up third, and the effort seems to be kind of inconsistent as well. So we'll see whether or not they jump back into the top row next week. Number 8. This team went 4-0 this week, and there are some teams on ridiculous winning streaks right now. They're now 31-13-3. They move up 1 spot to get into the first column, and that's the Minnesota Wild. Kudos to the Minnesota Wild for not just staying in the race, but kind of taking control of it and going on this really nice winning streak. And Ryan Hartman, when he signed to stay in Minnesota this week, he said he feels there's something special going on in Minnesota. And so he took less money to stay in Minnesota than he would have got on the market. He only took, I think it's 1.7 or 1.7 million a year, right? Would have made more than that on the market. So he gave money back, knowing he gave money back, because he has a chance to win. He feels like there's something special going on in Minnesota. So if you've got players buying in and maybe signing it below market value, you're going to be a happy Bill Guerin this summer, because that extra money you're saving, you can really build things up. But in between, or in this time and then in between now and then, why not go for it? Minnesota, there's not going to be any expectation on them. Whether they play Colorado or Vegas, all the pressure is going to be on the other team. They can just go out and have fun. And that can be the most dangerous team in the playoffs. So I don't know that I would want Minnesota in the first round. Second round, maybe. First round, I don't know. Kaprizov gets on a hot streak there. That could be a tough call. Number 7. These guys went 3-1 this week. They're 31-14-3, and that's Pittsburgh. They lost against Buffalo too. But you'll notice Buffalo moves up. I didn't bust Pittsburgh, and I didn't bust Boston for it. I just felt like, hey, you know what? Buffalo, good job. Good show. For Pittsburgh, we're going to get an idea of how things are between them and Boston when they meet up tomorrow. They've got a 2-game set coming. And so Pittsburgh, I've still got them in 7th. I've still got them sitting outside the top 6. I went back and forth on it. But there was a result tonight that told me, yep, I'm going to leave this just as it is. Because there's a team in 6th that went 2-1-1 this week. And everybody focused on the 1-1 early on. They do drop 3 spots from last week, because I do think there are some concerns. But they're 30-13-5 overall. And so I'm not busting Toronto down below 6th. I'm not doing it. They win 2 out of 4, but they were impressive against Winnipeg. So they keep a top 6 spot. And I debated about whether or not to put them in 5th. I opted to leave them in 6th tonight based on that result against Winnipeg. But yeah, I mean, the losses against Vancouver were tough, and they do get busted down a bit because goaltending's become kind of a question mark here now. But that question mark changed tonight, maybe. I love goaltenders because on any given night they could be the greatest, and we love this guy, and then he allows a shot, and then I knew he was a bum. I knew he sucked. I told you that we didn't get a goaltender at the deadline, and this is what happens. Or we get the wrong goaltender at the deadline, this is what happens. So yeah, the Leafs are 6th. Number 5, same spot as last week. They went 3-1 this week. They're 31-13-5, and that's Florida. The Florida Panthers are in this, and yeah, I have them ahead of Tampa on a power rankings again. And I'm trying to think back over all the years I've done power rankings. There's no way Florida's been ahead of Tampa as much as they have been this year. Florida, Carolina, Tampa, whichever one of those two teams meet in the first round, whichever series that is, that's going to be the most fun hockey to watch. And that's one that I almost guarantee I'm going to need. I use entire boards for each playoff game anyways. I may need multiple boards for those games. It's going to be so much fun to watch. Really, really looking forward to it. Florida's fast. They're talented. I think they're the fastest team in the league. I know that's a subjective term. I know you could make an argument for Colorado. You could make an argument for Carolina and a few others as well. But Florida, their transition game is just fantastic. Number 4, same spot as last week. They are 2-1 this week. They're 31-13-4 overall, and that's the Capitals. So Washington stays in 4th place. That's your top team in the East, which means there's 2 in the West and 1 in the Central that are your top 3 this week. So for Washington, good week. They go to New York, and they beat the Islanders twice. Once in a shootout, which of course I treat like a tie, and then that 6-3 win today. That was impressive. And so Washington, who I had switched a spot, I believe had Florida at 4th and Washington in 5th. I ended up deciding, nope, that's I'm just going to leave it like it was last week, which happens a lot. Teams move around, and then the next Saturday, I'm like, oh, look at that. Everybody's back where they started. It's like Toy Story. Everybody just acts back where you started, and you think they haven't moved. But they have. Just not perceptible to the human eye. Sometimes it's because people aren't ready for that kind of movement. They're not ready to know the truth. Number 3, moving up 3 spots from last week. So basically, they switched spots with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They went 2-0-2 this week. They're 31-10-6. That's Carolina. So Carolina switches spots with Toronto. They did win 2 out of 4, which means they lost 2 out of 4, but they lost those in extra time. So Carolina had a pretty good week. They are currently sitting first in that division, and they kind of have inside track on first right now, which would be interesting because whoever ends up finishing first in that division, of course, ends up with likely Nashville or Dallas. And you can make the argument that that would be a much, much easier matchup than facing Florida or Tampa. So whoever it feels like first place in that division is really important. Do you think first place is really important in that division? Shadow agrees. You agree that that's a really important spot to finish? Can I finish the video, or is there something you wanted in particular, or you just wanted to interrupt right now because that's what you do? All right. So he just looks very insistent that there's something. I can see him obviously on the camera. All right. So number 3 is Carolina. I'm just building dramatic tension. Number 2, these guys were 1-1 this week. They're 31-10-4. They were the last team in the league to have 10 regulation losses. They dropped 1 spot from last week. So with Colorado down, I didn't bust them down, and I really didn't. They lose first place, but not because they weren't playing. It's because the other team is just on this huge record-setting winning streak for them. Colorado number 2. They lost today to St. Louis. I didn't feel like that was worthy of busting them down further than I did. St. Louis really needed that game. Colorado really didn't. So it's forgivable if a team that's clinched a playoff spot ends up having kind of a wishy-washy game the next one. That's understandable. With the schedule being as it is, and again, they had that 1 week off, sometimes it can be hard to get back up to pace. So they stay at second. We'll see how they do this week. Which means number 1, going 4-0 this week, and with an amazing run. They're 34-11-2. They move up 1 spot from last week, and that is Vegas. Again, Vegas 34-11-2. They're number 1 overall in the NHL, which means they're not allowed to win the cup because they're going to get the President's Trophy. But still, it's been a really impressive run for Vegas. They had a bobble a few weeks ago. Yeah, they got over that. And they've been really good in every period of hockey. It feels like they're good all 60 minutes. They're putting those 60-minute efforts together. And Stone's been fantastic. Chandler Stevenson's been you can go on and on about who's the hero for Vegas, but it can change every night. And so Vegas and Colorado rightfully are seen as huge Stanley Cup favorites going into the playoffs. One of them isn't going to get out of the second round. So that could be just a war zone if those two teams meet each other in the second round. And with the way they're playing right now, I would give a slight edge to Vegas. They're fast, they're physical, they're big, they're experienced. There's a lot of depth there. You've got Marc-Andre Fleury in net. I know Grubauer's had a great year. Grubauer, of course, should be back for the next game for Colorado. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons to like Vegas if that series takes place. All I know is it'd be fantastic if it did. I kind of hope it does. And for Vegas right now, they're number 1. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. And I know everybody will, because that's how this works. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, we just have 3 more of these left, including this one. So there's one next week, one the week after, and then that's it for Power Rankings. So thank you guys so much for another season. We got 2 weeks to go. And then, of course, there's all the games that were added after that last Saturday because of all the shutdowns. So there's basically just a bunch of cleanup. It's going to feel like cleanup the rest of that schedule, but I'll be here to report on that too. All right, let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.